From Yahoo Finance, this is Ballots and Dollars, a podcast about the politics that affect your pocketbook. I'm Rick Newman.
And I'm Jen Rogers, in for Alexis Christoforous. Today we are talking about Mayor Mike Bloomberg and his bid to be president. Rick Newman, is he really running for president?
When you said his bid to be president, I was thinking to myself, his bid to be president or kingmaker, because that seems to be possibly the other role he might have. But before we jump in, Jen, thank you for stepping in. Alexis, our regular host, she's over in Davos.
Very fancy.
I know. She's where the special people are, and we're here in this, airless little room down in Manhattan somewhere. So thank you for stepping in. I'm on your show quite a lot, actually.
Glad to be here.
A great final round. And as we tape, I'll be on later today, and we talk about this stuff all the time. So you're a superb substitute for Alexis. I've been waiting to focus much on Bloomberg and spend much time on him because when he got into the race, which I guess was in December formally, he started out polling at 2%. That's when we we still have, I think, 12 Democrats. He's one of them, but that's when we still had close to 20. And it was like, well, he's way down among the also-rans. Well, he's not among the also-rans anymore. And he has come up quite a lot in the polls. So the last I looked, he went from 2%, that's 2% of Democrats say he might be their first choice. That's up to between 6 and 7%. And at 7% nationally, he's right behind Pete Buttigieg. Now, Buttigieg has gotten a lot of attention, and he is on the debate. He has been in the debates, of course. Bloomberg is not in the debates for some technical reasons. He doesn't qualify. But so he's to have gotten close to Buttigieg just by spending money on ads, basically. That's saying something. So he's becoming something. I think nobody knows exactly what. I mean, we've never really done it like this before with a guy who's rich and funding his own campaign. We've had a couple of those before, including Trump in 2016. But Bloomberg also is a successful politician. He has actually gotten elected before.
And
this is new.
He is so much richer than Trump. He's so much richer than everybody. Do you know, he's like just number 9
in the world. That's in the world, not just...
That's crazy times. We've never dealt with somebody that is this rich, running to be the leader of the free world. And you say he spent some money on ads. He spent $217 million on ads. If he weren't up in the polls, I'd be thinking something was wrong with advertising overall.
Yeah, you're right. And I'm glad you make that point about how rich he is because Trump did not fully self-fund his campaign in 2016. I think he self-funded a lot of the primary election, and then he got a lot of help once he was a nominee. But I think Trump's maximum was $100 million throughout the whole election. Or I think that's what he said he was willing to spend. I'm not sure he spent that much. But Bloomberg has already spent more than twice what Trump spent. And he has said he is willing to spend up to $1 billion to beat Trump, which would be 10 times what Trump spent. And if he spent $1 billion, that would knock his personal wealth down by less than 2%.
And
he's worth $55 billion.
Yeah. And have you ever bid on anything on eBay? Any auction.
Yes.
You get into it and you're like, I'm going to spend $50. But then you're into it and you think, you end up spending like $102. So I do not think that the fact that he has said, I will spend $1 billion is a ceiling at all
you could
out
be
there.
Right. I have a feeling Bloomberg thinks differently when he's bidding on items on eBay.
This is the most valuable item in the world, to be president of the United States.
He would just buy eBay, wouldn't he? Just buy it.
That's easy.
He's like, why am I bidding? I'm just going to buy this company.
The numbers, I think, are just staggering in terms of his wealth and how much he's spending. Just overall, can you kind of run down, just to put it in perspective, how big it is? Because I think, especially, look, we're in New York. A lot of these ads haven't hit me, but I made a call to somebody in another state, and they're seeing them.
A lot of these ads
he's going a lot of different places.
A lot of these ads may never hit us in New York unless he decides that's a place where he wants to spend a lot of money. So Bloomberg has spent $217 million on ads so far, and I don't think all of those ads have run. I think a lot of that he has bought ad time in the future. And there's one report where when Bloomberg, like in Houston, I think I saw one report, because he's buying so much ad space, he is driving up the cost of ad rates because it's a kind of a limited supply. I mean, there's not an unlimited supply of basically TV and radio ads. So anyway, 217 for Bloomberg. Tom Steyer, the other billionaire in the race, worth a mere $1.6 billion.
Poor
he's
Tom
only worth
Steyer.
about 2% of Bloomberg. He's 2% of a Bloomberg. He spent $143 million. That's a lot. So he's close. But then all of the other Democrats combined have only spent $116 million. So barely half. And that's, what is that? That's about 10 Democrats combined have spent only about half of what Bloomberg himself has spent. And Trump has spent $50 million so far. But Trump's got a lot of money in the bank, and he's going to spend more than that. So, man, that's a lot of advertising.
And he has really staffed up. Reportedly has 1,000 campaign staffers, which is what you would have maybe in October going into a race. He has more staffers than anybody else on the ground.
That means you've got people on the ground to go around, talk to voters, get voters excited, figure out where you need to be focusing to get voters out. I mean, so money doesn't buy everything. It's not automatically true that the person with the most money wins, but it buys all of the things you need to win.
Is that okay?
This is the question.
When you lay it out that way, is it okay to spend everything, all your own money? What if you spend $5 billion and he wins?
Yeah.
Is this okay for American democracy?
I'm not sure, but as I think about it, I feel like it's more okay than I used to think, and here's the reason why. It just takes money to win an election at the national level. I don't think that's necessarily true it's definitely not true at the local level. I mean, at the local level and probably even at the state level, you certainly see people kind of coming out of nowhere and just getting some energy and some volunteers and stuff. I mean, I can think of somebody in my county who just won an election last November, and it was like that. It was a small business person. She just wanted to take on this incumbent she felt wasn't getting the job done. You know, it's people standing on the subway platform or the train platform and knocking on doors. I mean, that makes a difference locally. Nationally, look, it just takes a lot of money to win, and whoever is going to win these elections is whether they have the money themselves or they have to get it from other people. It's going to take tons of money to get elected. I mean, it took tons for Obama to get elected. Hillary Clinton, for all the connections and as well known as she is, she spent almost twice as much as Trump. That wasn't her money, but in a way, if you're spending other people's money, you're more obligated to your donors to do what they want. So given that the election system we have just requires money, I'm not sure I mind that Bloomberg is buying his way into the election, and I'm not sure I would mind if he bought himself the Democratic nomination, given that he would be buying the airtime in the influence with voters. He would not be literally buying votes. He would be buying access to voters, and voters would still have a choice whether to vote for him or not. I think we should reform the system to get so that money matters less. Because I think money is very corrupting in politics, but I'm not sure I mind. What do you think?
I think that that's what this election's all about. Isn't that why we're seeing people like Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren? They're doing okay in the polls, and I think that it's about structural reform. And it seems kind of interesting. Again, who are the writers that are behind that? I mean, it just feels like I'm watching a movie, that another billionaire is going to come in and disrupt this race when the Democrats are trying to make it about getting money out of politics. And all we're doing is putting more money into politics. It's just what happens with the President Bloomberg? You know, go 4 years, go 8 years, you still don't get the changes that people want.
I wish I knew where he stood on this, and I don't. Where does he stand on campaign finance reform? And that would specifically, most importantly, be finding a way to repeal the 2014 Supreme Court ruling. What was it called?
Citizens United?
Thank you. Citizens United. Was that 2014? I remember that right?
You know what,
no, it was 2010.
Rick, I don't even know how old I am anymore. I've completely lost track of the year.
It's called Citizens United. You know, the millennials, the three millennials who are watching this podcast are listening, they're like, why don't they just pull out their phone and Google it?
I am doing that right now.
Okay, good.
Okay, Citizens United, 2010.
2010. Thank you. I would think that, I don't know, it's a good question. So when we interview him, we're going to have to ask him specifically, what do you want to do about Citizens United? But, you know, Bloomberg overall is a and I'm talking about after his 3 terms as mayor of New York. So what he has done since in terms of the kinds of things he's funding. And he does have a foundation that funds a lot of these things. He is generally a kind of a good government Democrat type of person. And
even though he was a Republican and an independent.
He's been everything. I mean, if you think about it, though, that kind of is ideal preparation for winning a general election against Donald Trump, right? And if he were the Democratic nominee, he would be the most centrist. He's more centrist than Joe Biden. And so as it stands, Biden, Buttigieg, and Klobuchar are considered the centrists among the Democrats. The ones who don't favor Medicare for all, the ones who say no, we're not going to just eliminate the whole private insurance system. We're not going to tax billionaires because we think it would be unworkable. So I think Bloomberg would even be to the right of them, but would put him more in the center, which I think would make him very electable against Trump because he's just kind of a pragmatic, business-friendly guy, and he would get some of those voters Democrats need if they're going to beat Trump. So we can talk a little bit about what does he stand for, but I kind of wonder if that even matters. I mean, given the way he's positioning himself.
I mean, the reason. Let's just go to the. Let's make a huge jump and say that he's the nominee. I think that is a huge jump, but let's make it and say how he matches up against President Trump. And certainly he's a centrist and he's pro-business, and you're not going to be asking him if he's a socialist, but in terms of the inequality issues, in terms of the manufacturing jobs, people who have been losing their jobs, what has he done for them? Here in New York City, under Bloomberg, inequality surged in this city. Like, I don't think you. How does AOC get elected in a post-Bloomberg world if he got this city to be something that's for everybody?
Well,
which is the people we're going after.
You lived in New York City when he was mayor, and I didn't. I've always lived in the suburbs, and I kind of liked him as mayor, but it didn't matter. I didn't get to vote for or against him, and he didn't affect me directly. I saw Bloomberg speak at a conference a few years ago, but when it was clear he had decided not to run in 2016, and he made it sound as if there was no way he was even thinking about running in 2020. He is 77 years old, by the way. And somebody asked him why he decided not to run in 2016, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, I just didn't think a New York Jew could win in the rest of the country. And he seems to have changed his mind. But I mean, that is going to be totally tested. I mean, the rest of America doesn't love New York City, and they don't love the way things get done here. So, I mean, I think that would be an issue. But we do need to remember that the next election is not really. I mean, if he's the Democratic nominee, he'll win all the blue states, and that's a lot. So we know that's California, New York, obviously, and the other obvious. That's a lot of electoral votes. But what the election is going to come down to 5 or 6 states, and it's going to come down to about 5% of the electorate in those 5 or 6 states. So that's swing voters in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Michigan, possibly Arizona, and possibly Florida. But we know the last election hinged on 80 to 100,000 votes, and this one, I mean, that tells you the relatively small group of voters that this whole battle is about. And I think one thing Bloomberg has going for him is this operation we've talked about, 1,000 people, all the money he needs to hire anybody. And he knows how to run an election because he's done it 3 times here in New York. He probably will be very good at going to the places where he needs to convince the right people to vote for him and get them to do it. I mean, that's what Hillary Clinton famously was bad at in 2016 when she never even visited Wisconsin because she thought it was a lock, and she ended up losing it. So,
however, he is.
I mean, nobody knows. Even the best political scientists who followed this for decades and know, every down to the third decimal point what every demographic group votes for. They don't know. They're like, we really don't have. There's no precedent for what he's doing here.
No textbook at all when you flood this much money in.
Ross Perot did it in 92, but first of all, he spent nowhere near as much money, even when you account for inflation. And Ross Perot was not a proven politician. I think that's a huge difference, is that Bloomberg And, getting elected mayor of New York City, it's not like getting elected mayor of South Bend, Indiana. No dig intended. Wink, wink. New York City is the size of many states, so it's equivalent to a governorship in that way. And the budget here, the current budget, they're talking about a $95 billion budget. I mean, that's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. Does this play right into Elizabeth Warren's hands and her railing against billionaires? Look, she can just say, he doesn't want me to be president because I'm going to tax him. I have a wealth tax. That's why this man is going to spend all this money, because he wants to keep it.
Yeah, I think Bloomberg should address that directly. And it seems like it's such an easy one for him to swat down. So
what would he say?
I'll try to guess what he would say.
Okay.
So first of all, the wealth tax is probably never going to happen. I don't think, even if Democrats got control of the Senate, and there's been some decent analysis of this, that they would have enough votes for the wealth tax because, yes, the majority of Americans are fine with taxing the wealthy more, but there's also they also feel like, when is this going to hit me? And there would be some Democrats from fairly
It's not going to hit
states.
you till you have $50 million, right?
But it starts here and then they lower the threshold and stuff. But the other problem with the wealth tax is it might be unconstitutional just because of a certain clause in the Constitution. And then the really hard part of it is, how do you value certain things that you would tax every year? Your art collection or your yacht is the famous example. And by the way, why don't you just do something simpler? If you want to tax the wealthy more, just tax them more through the parts of the tax code that we already know work. Just raise the income tax or raise the capital gains tax would be the most direct way. And I think Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders want to do all of those things. So I think Bloomberg could say the wealth tax just won't work. I'm a pragmatist. I want to do things that are going to work. And by the way, if you did tax me at 2%, I've got more money than I know what to do with. And if you take away 2% of my $55 billion, I'll have 3.5. What would it be? 53 billion.
Which is what Elizabeth Warren says. You're still going to be a billionaire.
Yeah, he could say that though. He'd say it's not my thing because it'll never work. But if you took 2% away from me every year, I would die the richest guy I've ever known anyway.
It's interesting.
Which he should do. He should say I just don't give a crap.
I went on his website earlier and just looking at the issues, because I do think that inequality is an issue this campaign, and it's not something that he's highlighting. And I wonder if that's because it's a difficult issue for him, and maybe he's going to get around to it. But he does really well setting out on guns, and as you noted, on the climate change issue as well, which I think are two very important issues this cycle. But the inequality problem is not going away, and I just think being a billionaire, it does have to be something that he needs to take on right away.
Let me answer that with a question first, but then I'll answer it with an answer. Among the Democrats, who do you think is doing a good job making fixing inequality the highlight of their campaign?
I would say Sanders and Warren.
Sanders and Warren, and that is their thing, basically. Biden?
Not so much. Sort of status quo.
So Biden is the front runner still, and he's not. He's got those kinds of things as part of his plan. It's not what he's running on, though. Biden, kind of like Bloomberg, they're both really attacking Trump and comparing themselves to Trump rather than running against the other Democrats, which I think is important. And is that the thing that will actually put them over the top? This is all different than it's been before. So Bloomberg does address inequality, and he's because he has not been doing this for as long as the other candidates. His plans are not nearly as developed because he hasn't been working on them as long as the others and testing them and then revising them based on what kind of public reaction it gets and stuff like that. But here's what his economic plan is. I mean, he wants to so first of all, he does favor higher taxes on the wealthy. I don't think he has said exactly how he would do that yet. And he's also said he doesn't want to do it through the wealth tax. But there are lots of other ways you could do it. You could just raise the income tax, raise the capital gains tax, raise the corporate tax, whatever. And then his economic plan, it's actually boring but prudent. So he wants to do things to improve the skills of the workforce in the places that need improvements in the skill of the workforce. That's a lot of the Midwest. That's a lot of the industrial part of the country. Trump's pitch to those voters was "Make America Great Again," by which he meant I'm going to bring back the good jobs that used to support the middle class in these parts of the country, which he has not done and which he can't do. I mean, we've talked about that so many times on our shows, right? It just so happens that the economy is doing pretty well right now, but he has not brought back any jobs. To the extent manufacturing is doing well, it's because we do still build stuff, and the economy has supported an improvement in that part of the sector. But that's going to go back down again during the next recession. And Bloomberg, right, he says what smart economists say we need to do, which is we need to boost the skill level all throughout the workforce, especially for people who don't go to college. Doesn't mean you have to go to college. It means you have to get better skills that include a lot of technical training, how to operate digital machinery, specific skills that pay more. And he's got plans for how to do this. He wants to replace every coal plant in the country. I think he says there are 251 coal plants left. He wants to replace every one of those. But instead of just sort of the blanket statement, we got to end coal, which is what you hear from Elizabeth Warren, for example. She also wants to just ban fracking. Bloomberg says, I want to close those plants, but I want to convert those plants in place to clean energy plants so that you're not just leaving these people high and dry. I mean, the people who work in the industry. I mean, that's a smart approach. I'm not sure it's feasible everywhere, but he's not just saying, I think Elizabeth Warren is way too facile sometimes. She says, we're going to ban fracking. We're going to move to clean energy. And if you work in fracking, and guess what? Fracking, there are a lot of fracking jobs in Ohio, a swing state, in Pennsylvania, a swing state. I mean, what are those voters supposed to think? Right. I mean, you just want to make my industry obsolete, and what are you going to do? Like, just send me a welfare check? So Bloomberg is saying, and he has actually worked this issue for some time, close the coal plants, but convert them into whatever comes after carbon energy so that we keep those jobs in place. And maybe those new jobs are even better jobs than mining coal, which one would hope they are.
This came up during the most recent debate on healthcare. If you kind of get rid of the private healthcare industry, what happens to all those jobs? The question about Des Moines being an insurance town.
Great. Yeah.
Well, where are all these people going to go get jobs? And Bernie Sanders said, it's a 5-year plan to get those people into other careers.
When I heard that, I thought if I worked in the insurance industry in Iowa and Bernie Sanders said, don't worry, I'm going to eliminate your industry, but I've got a 5-year plan to transition you into something else, I would immediately say, no, thanks. I just please stay away. I don't want your 5-year plan. I want what I got right now. Let me go back to the Bloomberg economic plan. So I just did my best to sort of regurgitate what I understand his plan to be. I'm boring myself as I say it. I'm like, this is so boring. There's no slogan. Like, Trump had a great slogan, "Make America Great Again." He wants to raise the minimum wage to $15, which is what a lot of the other Democrats do. That's just not fun. It's not pithy.
So we need something more?
I don't know. So I think that if he were not this super billionaire with all this money, for sure he would need, like, this would just, well, guess what? There are 10 other Democrats who kind of have the same plan, and you don't even know their names because no one's interested because it's just not grabby. So because Bloomberg has all this money and because he's running after Trump, he's going after Trump instead of like playing small ball among the other Democrats. He's getting attention, but the traditional rule would say he just has no sizzle, and that he would not be likely to win. If you disagree, if you think Mike Bloomberg has sizzle, please jump in. I'm waiting.
I don't think
you guys,
Bloomberg and sizzle are not commonly put together.
Alex here, they're just silent.
We got a
Mensa from Alex.
So you've said a couple times about the ads that he's going after Trump.
Yeah.
Which brings me to this one theory. I made a couple calls before, just talking to some people. And one person, and it goes back to the first question I asked you, is he really running?
I have no short
memory, Jen. That he...
Could you remind me the first?
The first question was, is Bloomberg really running? Is this real? There are some theories out there that he is just going after Trump, and he's willing to spend his own money because he can play that game, while the other Democrats are going to continue, trying to do the positive message and let's make it about what we're going to do and kind of forget about what's going on over here while we're having this impeachment trial. But Bloomberg can go out. He can go out early. He can spend all this money. It's a lot easier than pushing it through somebody else's campaign. Mm-hmm. But he's not really in it to win. He's really in it to get the message out there that Trump is the wrong answer.
I think he's I think he's playing it both ways is my best guess. And to go back to a little bit of the history here, and by the way, we had a top Bloomberg advisor on one of our shows recently, not your show, but the guy's name is Tusk, and he's a money manager who is working with the campaign and sort of going around and speaking on behalf of Bloomberg. And Alexis and Brian Sozzi and Andy Serwer asked him that question, like, how long is he going to go the distance, or like, what's his deal? And he gave kind of a surprisingly candid answer, and he pointed out that when Bloomberg made the decision, which is last half of 2019, Biden was looking very shaky. So Biden, the front runner, looking shaky, and if Biden collapsed, who would that leave? That would leave, young Pete Buttigieg, totally unproven. It would leave Amy Klobuchar, who I think is very qualified, but just not getting a lot of traction. And I guess the thinking then was, if Biden collapses, then it's just wide open for either Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, and we're going to have a near socialist as the Democratic nominee. So Bloomberg says, can't let that happen because that person will lose to Trump, so I need to get into this race. And lo and behold, look what has happened. Biden has not collapsed. He worries about his ineptitude are overblown. And Bloomberg's rationale was that if Joe Biden collapses, I need to be there to save the party and save the country. And Joe Biden is not collapsing. So that suggests that if let's say Biden is a nominee, Bloomberg doesn't win, what does he do? I guess what we think he does, which he said he's going to do, is he just funds the Biden/Democratic effort to beat Trump in November with a ton of money.
Before we go, to wrap it up, who is going to have the better Super Bowl commercial? President Trump or Mike Bloomberg? So they have both bought Super Bowl ads.
Doesn't that, by the way,
Super Bowl ads.
So when we talk, we're just talking. I'm asserting that Mike Bloomberg has no sizzle, but the fight between Bloomberg and Trump does have sizzle. And one thing, one signal of Bloomberg's success so far is that Trump is tweeting about him. So he has gotten under Trump's skin.
And he has a nickname.
He has Mini
Mini Mike.
Yeah, that's what Trump calls him. So there's Mini Mike and Sleepy Joe. And I love the fact that he's getting under Trump's skin. I mean, to me, that's the entertainment value there is good. And Trump is now making him part of the Trump reality show in the White House.
And Trump is mad that he's spending so much on the ads.
Well, he's
tweeted about the Medicare, the health ads, and that's bugging him.
And it's got to also bug him that Bloomberg is so much richer than he is. So I mean,
so much richer.
So I don't spend a lot of time watching ads, at least not yet. And I actually like Joe Biden's ads going after Trump a little bit more because he's real. Joe Biden is kind of like Mr. Gentile, in his persona, but his ads are really sharp. Have you seen
The world is laughing at us.
The world is laughing at us. He has another ad showing that Trump seems obsessed with Biden, and he's just got cuts of Trump going, Biden, 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 Joe Biden, Joe. And it's like, why is the president so obsessed with me? There must be something to me. I mean, that's the underlying ad. So, and Bloomberg's ads have been a little more earnest.
Get to know me.
Yeah, and the Super Bowl is when you want to bring the razzle dazzle, right, for your ads. So I'm interested to see. I'm sure Bloomberg's ad will be better because I think Trump's are so hokey. With the bald eagle and Trump trying to look militaristic and commanding. To me, they're so hokey in the MAGA BS. So I hope Bloomberg gets a little funky and has some fun with his ad, which would be a winner.
I agree. If he goes funny, I think it could be good. Otherwise,
do you know I'm sorry to cut you. Do you know the cost of a Super Bowl ad?
$10 million, I think, is what Bloomberg reportedly spent for 60 seconds.
I mean, so Bernie Sanders only the top fundraiser in the last quarter raised $34 million. So to buy a Super Bowl ad would be 1/3 of his entire fundraising for the last quarter. So that tells you how much money Bloomberg has that he can just toss off a Super Bowl ad.
This has been so fun. I will let you know that I am going 49ers to win, and I think Trump might have the better Super Bowl ad.
Why?
I just feel like the patriotic Eagle stuff is going to play really well on Super Bowl Sunday. But if Bloomberg goes funny, maybe.
Well, maybe you'll invite me on your show the day after
Sure.
to talk about the Trump versus Bloomberg Super Bowl ad.
Can't wait. We'll see who's better. But
Jen, thank you for doing this.
49ers definitely are going to win. I cannot say anything about who's going to
You
win
know
for
what? I have
president, but I'm going 49ers are winning.
Okay, my team, the Steelers, hasn't even made the playoffs. 2 years in a row, my terrible towels have been in a drawer, Mike Tomlin. So I'm with your 49ers. I'm just happy the Patriots have lost and the Ravens lost, so it's already been a good season for me. I'm Go Niners. I'm with you.
So fun. Thank you.